Episode 16, titled Apply FedRAMP Control Parameters, we focus on turning abstract baseline knobs into precise, auditable settings that people can configure, measure, and defend. The Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, FedRAMP, after first use, delivers strength through specificity, and parameters are where that specificity lives. When a team names an exact timeout, threshold, or retention value, the control stops being a principle and becomes a behavior. That is the difference assessors trust. Not that you admire a requirement, but that you set it, keep it, and can show where it is enforced. We will move from definition to sources, then to selection, documentation, implementation, and verification, so your parameters read like decisions a mission owner would sign and a technician could replicate. Parameters are the variable values that tailor control requirements to your system's risk, usability, and operating model. NIST control language often says the organization defines, followed by a blank. How many attempts? How many minutes? How many months? Which roles? Which thresholds? FedRAMP baselines propose defaults or ranges, but the accountable choice is yours, and it must be coherent across policy, configuration, and evidence. Treat each parameter as a small contract. The value is chosen, the rationale is recorded, the configuration is applied, and the proof is retrievable. When parameters are left implicit, reviewers find contradictions. When parameters are explicit, testing becomes routine and continuous monitoring feels like ordinary work instead of a scavenger hunt. Finding the right sources for parameter values prevents arguments later. Start with baseline definitions published for your selected impact level because they encode tested positions on minimum strength. Layer in agency expectations from your sponsor's policies, handbooks, or memoranda, which may tighten values for mission or legal reasons. Add contractual obligations when you serve multiple programs that impose service-level commitments, privacy constraints, or incident timing rules. The quality move is to cite these sources in 1 or 2 sentences next to the value you choose, so the decision reads as a synthesis rather than a guess. When an assessor asks, "Why this number?" your answer is not folklore. It is a clear inheritance from baseline, sponsor policy, and commitments you already carry. Selecting values is a balancing act among risk tolerance, usability, and operational capacity. Risk tolerance sets the floor. High impact on availability argues for tighter thresholds and faster response. Sensitive records argue for stronger authentication and shorter sessions. Usability sets the ceiling. Session locks that trigger every minute degrade mission work, while password complexity beyond human memory invites unsafe workarounds. Operational capacity defines what you can sustain. Log retention of 2 years is only credible if storage, indexing, and retrieval remain reliable and affordable. Good choices reflect all three. They protect what matters, they respect how people actually work, and they match the systems you operate without brittle heroics. If any leg of the stool is missing, the value will wobble in production. Parameters belong inside the System Security Plan, SSP, after first use narratives and in supporting procedures, not in a hidden spray sheet that no one reads. Write them into the same paragraphs that describe the control implementation, using the console's terms where possible. Sessions lock after 15 minutes of inactivity. Critical patches apply within 7 days of release. Passwords must be at least 14 characters with rotation every 90 days. Then link to the procedure that a technician follows and to the configuration export that proves the value is actually set. This braided approach, narrative, procedure, and artifact, prevents drift because anyone reading the SSP can jump directly to the system of record where the parameter lives and see the same number reflected there. Concrete examples make parameters tangible. Consider a straightforward line. Account lockout occurs after 5 consecutive failed authentication attempts within 10 minutes, with lockout lasting 15 minutes. That sentence encodes multiple decisions at once: threshold, window, and duration. It is testable because a 3PAO, third-party assessment organization, after first use, can reproduce the behavior. And it is operational because administrators can confirm the setting in the identity provider. Extend the example with escalation. Repeated lockouts from the same source trigger a high-severity alert reviewed within 15 minutes by security operations. Now the parameter interacts with monitoring and response, and the narrative begins to resemble the system you actually run. The value is not a guess. It is a dial you can show and adjust with intent. A common failure pattern is mixed values across tools, which creates audit contradictions and operational confusion. Your written policy might promise 90 days of log retention, while the collector holds 30 and the archive holds 180. Or your session log describes 15 minutes in the SSP, while two applications use 10 and one uses 30. Reviewers notice, users complain, and operations inherits exception handling they never agreed to. The solution is coherence. Pick the value, propagate it to every relevant enforcement point, and schedule a quick verification sweep after each change. Where a tool cannot meet the standard, record the exception plainly, apply a compensating control, and either change the tool or change the parameter with sponsor approval. Consistency is not cosmetic. It is control. You can accelerate consistency with a central parameter register owned by named roles. The register is a simple catalog listing each parameter, its current value, the rationale, the source citation, the owner, the enforcement locations, and the last verification date. Keep it modest but living, and store it where product, security, and operations all read and write. When engineers configure a new service or migrate a workload, they pull from the register, not from memory. When assessors ask for values, you export the register instead of flipping pages. Ownership matters. Every entry should name a single accountable role for the value and a maintainer for the configuration footprint. A register turns scattered settings into a governance surface you can manage. Tying each parameter to configuration settings and monitoring checks closes the loop between intent and reality. If the value lives in an identity policy, record the policy name, tenant, or realm, and the exact rule text. If it lives in infrastructure as code, record the module, variable, and commit hash. If monitoring verifies the value, name the query or compliance rule that flags drift and the dashboard that shows daily status. The strongest posture is automated. A nightly job tests a handful of critical parameters and raises an alert if the configuration diverges from the register. Even a lightweight check, such as a saved view in your compliance tool, beats manual spot checks scattered through email threads. Parameters earn trust when they can be watched. Log retention illustrates the full discipline end to end. Suppose you choose 90 days as your hot retention period with a 12-month archive for originals. You document the value in the SSP and the retention policy in the logging platform. You confirm storage capacity and indexing performance to ensure usability remains acceptable. You obtain approvals from the risk owner and the sponsoring agency if their policy dictates a minimum. You add a monthly check that counts events in the 90-day window and validates the archive's oldest timestamp. You record the approval date, the policy link, the monitoring query, and the storage bucket location in the parameter register. An assessor can now follow a clean path from decision to proof without improvisation. A compact phrase can keep the habit strong. Decide, document, deploy, demonstrate. Decide means choose a value with sources and rationale. Document means write the value into SSP pros and the parameter register. Deploy means set the configuration everywhere it applies, using the same names the tools use. Demonstrate means show dated evidence that the value exists and is monitored for drift. When a meeting wanders into preference or a debate about what teams usually do, repeat the phrase and ask which step is missing. Most inconsistencies collapse under this four-step lens because the problem is rarely theory. It is the absence of one link in the chain. Alignment with sponsor policies and assessor methods guards against unwanted surprises during review. Some agencies require specific numbers for account reviews, multi-factor authentication, or incident reporting windows, and a few expect language that mirrors their handbooks verbatim. Some assessors test parameters by sampling configurations. Others prefer observed behavior reproduced during interviews or demonstrations. Ask early how they will verify, then present your values in the format that fits their method. If a sponsor's policy exceeds your baseline selection, adopt the stricter value, record the rationale, and reflect the change in procedures and tooling. Alignment is not capitulation. It is respect for the environment where your service will live. A practical checkpoint ensures discipline without ceremony. Verify that each critical parameter has a value selected, recorded, implemented, tested, and reviewed. Selected means a number or setting exists with a rationale. Recorded means it appears in both the SSP and the register. Implemented means the configuration is applied at every enforcement point. Tested means a person or a tool has confirmed behavior or state within the last cycle.
Reviewed means the owner looked at the parameter after a change window or at the scheduled cadence and recomputed the rationale if context shifted. Say these 5 words aloud while scanning the register. Any missing verb becomes the next action, not a footnote.
We close by reaffirming that parameters are small decisions with outsized impact on credibility. When you publish a parameter register with owners, sources, enforcement points, and verification dates, you turn policy into practice others can inspect without help. The final move is simple and valuable. Confirm your review cadence. Decide which parameters get a monthly glance, which merit a quarterly test, and which require an annual reconfirmation with the sponsor. Put those dates on the calendar and tie them to the monitoring views you already use. With a living register and a steady cadence, the knobs stay where you set them, the evidence remains fresh, and the next assessment reads like a tour of decisions you made on purpose and can prove on demand. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.